Coming up on Lawmakers, Governor Sonny Perdue signs tort reform into law. A bill to balance state and federal road dollars passes the Senate. And privacy protection for cell phone users is one step closer to reality. Those stories and more are next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Wednesday, February 16th. Here are your anchors in Wandy Lawson and Gerald Bryant.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's broadcast, the House Education Committee passes Governor Perdue's Master Teacher Plan.
And Democratic leaders say the Hope Scholarship is under siege. But our top story tonight, the governor signs tort reform into law. Governor Sonny Perdue signed Senate Bill 3, the tort reform bill, into law today at Northside Hospital in Dunwoody. David Zelski joins us live with more from that event. David.
Well, thanks, Anwandi. Joining Governor Perdue were several lawmakers who worked on the bill, including its sponsor, Senator Preston Smith, who believes Senate Bill 3 is a step in the right direction to lower skyrocketing health care premiums and to increase health care access in rural areas.
It's not good for Georgia when some women in the rural areas already have to drive 50 or more miles for OB care. That's not good. And we can't let that continue to happen, and we have to create an environment where it will not further erode, and I think this goes a long way in doing that.
Senate Bill 3 is a comprehensive and meaningful civil justice reform package that will make substantive changes to ensure affordable access to quality health care and create a more positive business environment in Georgia for job creation and growth.
By the way, this is the first bill of the 2005 session, and it couldn't be a better, more timely opportunity here.
Just after signing the bill, Governor Perdue, Senator Smith, and First Lady Mary Perdue took a tour of several facilities at Northside Hospital's Women's Center.
Big buddy, look at there, Mary.
Where several employees and patients thanked him for signing the bill into law.
I'm honored to affix my signature. It becomes law upon the signature of the governor. And Senate Bill 3 is now law in Georgia.
Now, odds are the babies Governor Perdue met today will not remember meeting him in the first few days of their life, but the governor believes making Senate Bill 3 law will improve their access to affordable health care in the future. Only time will tell. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, David. Well, the House today agreed to protect volunteer health professionals from individual civil liability. House Bill 166, the Health Share Volunteers in Medicine Act, would consider health care providers who offer pro bono treatment for the poor state employees. In the event that a malpractice claim was filed, the patient would have to sue the provider in state court. Representative Tom Bordeaux, who's an attorney, opposed that bill on the grounds that hospitals that treat the poor already receive state and federal money. The bill sponsor, Mickey Chanel, countered that the bill would encourage thousands of providers to volunteer their services. First, Representative Bordeaux.
It is free care to the patient that is going to be provided so that the hospitals get the Indigent Care Trust Fund dollars. The scam here is that with this bill passing, the doctors and the hospitals get to be immune for their mistakes, and the taxpayers pay for their mistakes.
Representative Bordeaux fought this bill last year and tried to make the convoluted discussion that somehow or another, because hospitals got money out of the Indigent Care Trust Fund, that they were in a backdoor way being compensated for the care. Well, they get money out of the Indigent Care Trust Fund, but none of them get money out of the Indigent Care Trust Fund in a sufficient amount of money to pay for the indigent care that they already provide. What it really is, and what his amendment does, and what he wants to do, in my opinion, is open up a legal loophole so the trial lawyers can use this as a way to sue the people who are providing that care.
An amendment by Representatives Tom Bordeaux and Jeanette Jamison would have exempted facilities receiving that indigent trust money from the protections of the bill. That amendment failed. House Bill 166 passed by a vote of 145 to 19 and goes to the Senate.
The Senate today voted to table a resolution that would let local school boards use local education sales tax money for something other than new construction. The bill's sponsor, Senator Casey Cagle, explains the new options in Senate Resolution 34.
What we want to do is we want to create two additional options. Option number two would be a hybrid effect in which 75% of the sales tax would be used for capital outlay, but 25% of it could be used for maintenance and operation, giving a dollar-for-dollar rollback against property taxes to the citizens of that particular county. The third option would be that 100% of that sales tax could be used for maintenance and operation.
Senator Emanuel Jones, an opponent of the resolution, said it was unnecessary and would do nothing towards what he considers a more important goal, creating smaller class sizes in Georgia.
In my opinion, SR 34 is just a veiled attempt in this state to use sales taxes to fund public education. I think what this resolution does very simply is that it creates a permanent tax that's going to allow the school systems to divert monies that should have been used for capital outlays to now to use those funds for maintenance of facilities as well as to pay salaries of those in the school systems.
To be against this bill, one, you have to be against the people of Georgia, giving them an opportunity to vote on it. Number two is you've got to be against giving the people in the local school system an opportunity to vote on it, and the local school systems the opportunity to authorize these various plans or options to bring property tax relief to the citizens of Georgia. So I don't think this is the right issue to fight on.
Senator Cagle then moved to table the bill as a proposed constitutional amendment. It needed 38 votes. He told me Senate Democrats had locked down on the issue, making it unlikely to get those needed votes, and he said he'll try to work out disagreements over the measure. Also today, the Senate passed Senate Bill 4, which would change the way federal funds for transportation projects are distributed across the state. If the bill becomes law, interstate work would be taken out of the Congressional balancing formula that determines where that federal money goes. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman is live at the Capitol with more. Jesse.
Well, thank you, Gerald. Senator Mitch Seabaugh said early on that half the battle in getting this bill passed would be communicating exactly what it does to other lawmakers. The other half would be convincing them that this bill does not necessarily favor urban areas. Of course, not all the other senators saw it that way. Interstate roadways are often very expensive to build and maintain, especially in urban areas. Under current law, all federal funds for interstates and other roads are balanced across the state's 13 congressional districts.
The result of this is that currently congressional districts that have a large dollar amount of interstate projects in a given balancing period will have less money in that 3-year step or that window on local infrastructure projects.
Although Senator Seabaugh and others have insisted this is not a bill favoring Metro Atlanta, some rural lawmakers maintain doubts.
If you take all this interstate money off the top, rural Georgia's roads will suffer. We will have less money for rural Georgia roads. Anytime you take away from the pot before you start divvying it up, naturally you're going to have less money.
An amendment that would have gutted SB 4 failed. The bill itself passed overwhelmingly.
We're able to get our message out that this is not an urban versus rural situation, that this is something that is good for rural Georgia and protection of their local road projects, and I'm really encouraged to that.
I talked with Department of Transportation Commissioner Harold Linenthal about this bill early on in the session, and he was in favor of it. He says it will give the department greater flexibility and allow them to complete projects quicker. Senate Bill 4 now goes to the House. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks for the report, Jesse.
Well, the House today cleared the way for the Department of Transportation to open flex auto lanes. The sponsor of House Bill 273, Representative John Lunsford, said opening emergency lanes to traffic will alleviate congestion in metro areas. Representative Stephanie Benefield and other legislators questioned the safety of the plan.
Instead of an emergency vehicle, my concern was, let's say my father's having a heart attack and I'm driving along the highway trying to get him to the hospital. Are you saying I should just get in the grassy area and use that to get past all the traffic?
Well, Representative Biffin, I think that's a great question, but if your father was having a heart attack, I'd hope you'd call 911. They have a siren and lights to get down the freeway, and I hope that doesn't happen. But the other side of the coin is if it's truly an emergency, we're asking them to look at a maximum of a small number of areas throughout the state, determine is it feasible, and only opening up the lanes for auto traffic if the department determines that it is feasible and safe to do so.
House Bill 273 allows the Department of Transportation to study the feasibility of creating flex lanes. The department is not required to do so. The measure passed by a vote of 103 to 57. The House also agreed to extend state laws about window tinting to out-of-state drivers. Representative Calvin Hill said the change was mandated by the state Supreme Court, but Representative David Lucas questioned its enforcement.
They declared the law that applied to just Georgia vehicles as unconstitutional. So we rewrote the bill to correct that technicality.
How do you apply Georgia law to someone who's from Florida who has a car?
I'm not a Supreme Court judge. They're the ones that made that ruling. I think you'd have to take it up with them. I'm just complying by their ruling.
With the gentleman yield further?
Yes, sir.
If the law in Florida is different from the law in Georgia, and I'm a resident of Florida and driving through Georgia, you can give me a ticket for my window?
That's correct, sir. This is on all safety issues on vehicles. If it is deemed by the state of Georgia to be an unsafe vehicle, they have by federal law the right to do this, and this passes that test. Whether I agree with it or not, that is in fact the law.
House Bill 20 passed by a vote of 125 to 33 and goes to the Senate.
The MARTA board would have additional authority to deal with ethics violations of board members under a bill passed in the Senate today. Senator Dan Moody speaks in favor of Senate Bill 99.
The legislation adds a provision allowing the board to remove one of its board members when that person does not disclose a conflict of interest that's currently required by law.
The authority to remove a board member would kick in only after the MARTA appointing authority, county commissions, have failed to approve or deny the request. Senate Bill 99 passed without opposition and goes to the House. Also in the Senate today, a vote in favor of protecting the personal information of Georgia motorists. Once again, Senator Dan Moody.
Senate Bill 121 will simply exempt records from the State Road and Tollway Authority from public disclosure that would reveal the identity or financial information about someone who has a Georgia 400 cruise card, for example.
Currently, that personal information is available. Senate Bill 121 plugs that loophole. It passed 49 to 0 and goes to the House.
Governor Sonny Perdue's initiative to fight against unsolicited cell phone calls received a do-pass recommendation from the Senate Science and Technology Committee today. Lawmakers Chriss Knight joins us live from the Capitol with more on Senate Bill 46. Chris.
In Wandy, the legislation would require cell phone service providers to first obtain a customer's consent before publishing that person's contact information in any directory. Today, Senate Bill 46 passed unanimously out of the Senate Science and Technology Committee.
It's called the Wireless Privacy Act, and it's one step closer to becoming law.
It's designed to protect the privacy of wireless telephone customers and their telephone numbers.
Senate Bill 46 comes in light of the looming distribution of a nationwide wireless 411 directory of private cell phone numbers.
And what Governor Perdue has done here in Georgia is propose a bill that would require the wireless telephone companies to obtain the consent of the customer before their number is placed in that directory.
The legislation passed out of the Senate Science and Technology Committee with a few changes.
The original bill had a disclosure that was required to be given to customers before they consented to their wireless telephone number being placed in this directory. That disclosure has been strengthened and is now required to be given to all customers and not just those customers whose plans are charged by the minute.
But what will happen to the bill once it's taken up on the Senate floor?
Increasingly, consumers' rights with large companies like our telecom companies are issues of really great concern and a lot of confusion.
While Senator Sam Zamarripa supports the intent of Senate Bill 46, he anticipates there may be a few more changes added to the legislation.
The bill does a good job of outlining what some of the rights of the companies are with regard to telephone numbers. What it doesn't do is do an equally good job of outlining what my rights are, or say your rights are, as a user of those services to be protected.
And Senate Bill 46 now heads to the Senate Rules Committee. Reporting live, I'm Chriss Knight for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Well, our weekly Wednesday briefing from journalist Tom Crawford begins with his take on constitutional amendments, including Senator Casey Cagle's education sales tax measure tabled in the Senate today.
It was obvious, and he indicated so, that he did not have the 38 votes you need to get it through. So
On that and on the faith-based funding amendment, both, Democrats held together and denied Republicans a two-thirds majority to get them through.
Yeah, and I think in this case with Senator Cagle, he was actually counting on some Democratic votes. I don't think we would have seen that on the calendar today in the Senate unless he thought he had enough votes to get it passed.
That's generally a pretty good indication. If it's on the calendar, it's because the Republicans feel they've got the votes to pass it, and this is twice now in the past week where something that was on the calendar did not go through.
And in the instance of the faith-based organizations and state money potentially going to those organizations to provide social services, do you think we're likely to see it anytime soon? Eric Johnson, President Pro Tem, kind of hinted to us yesterday that it could wait till next year.
I think that's a real possibility because it had to be embarrassing for the governor and for his allies in the Republican Party that they brought it up last week and still fell 3 votes short, so they may let that one sit out for a while, get a little seasoning to it, and then try again in the next session.
And the positive column for the governor and Republicans is tort reform, and by this time that bill has been signed into law.
That's right. We were told earlier today that Governor Perdue would go to an Atlanta hospital, sign that bill into law, which I think we can safely assume he will. And for such a complex piece of legislation, it got through both houses amazingly fast, and the governor signed it within 48 hours of the bill making it to him.
And we also had something of a surprise development yesterday after people in the Senate saying they didn't seem that interested in reapportionment, that being mostly the desire of the House. We actually had some maps coming out of the Senate for congressional reapportionment.
Maps coming out of the Senate and the House as well. That's correct. So that will spice up the last few weeks of the session. As you know, Gerald, reapportionment's always an interesting thing to cover. And it sometimes brings out the worst in everybody, and that might be the case here, but we'll see a lot of maneuvering here in the days ahead.
I remember when I first started covering state government about 15 years ago, they told me reapportionment only came up every 10 years, and I think I've covered it at least 5 or 6 times since then. So I'm not sure whoever told me that was telling me the truth, Tom.
That used to be the case, but not anymore. These are new times we're in, and I think once a party gets hold of the legislative chamber, they feel it's their job to go in there and start redrawing the lines.
We had a couple of development bills also in the Economic Development Committee in the Senate yesterday. One, and it's pretty well celebrated now, Senate Bill 5 died, and they actually had kind of a mock funeral for it. But another one, House Bill 218, is also of concern to its detractors, saying there is secrecy involved. Tell us a little about 218, Tom. I know you were there.
That's a bill that allows state and local officials who are trying to recruit a business to come to Georgia to keep what they're doing secret, to exempt it from open records law disclosure. And there's some concerns that this might enable them to put a Walmart or a chicken rendering plant or a pig farm in somebody's backyard without that person even knowing about it until the deal was sealed and the deed was done. It passed out of committee pretty easily, as you know, and I would be surprised if it doesn't pass when it comes up before the full Senate for a vote.
And I think another bill that a lot of people are interested in may be up next week, and that is Senator Don Thomas's smoking ban. I think that might come up early next week on the floor of the Senate.
That's right. It passed the Senate last year and got hung up in the House, but with a Republican majority in the House this year, that's got a very good prospect of passing.
The Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate say that the Hope Scholarship is under attack. Today, during a press conference, Minority Leaders Representative DeBose Porter and Senator Robert Brown cited 2 pieces of legislation they say will negatively impact the Hope Scholarship, including Governor Perdue's proposed plan to use $1.7 million in lottery proceeds to create Georgia College 411, a website for college-bound students.
We launched a website, nohawks.com, and it costs $90 to register and file a website. To spend $1.5 million, we just think is outrageous, much less from the Hope Scholarship funds. That is equivalent to 450 Hope Scholarships in a year. That money needs to be spent on students and getting our people into higher education and to complete the degrees.
The Democrats also spoke out against House Bill 299. That bill would cap the amount of hours Hope covers to 127 credit hours. Democrats say the caps would deter students from entering programs that require more than 127 hours to complete.
Pharmacy program, which was incorporated in the Hope Scholarship from its beginning. From its very beginning, almost now 14 years ago, has always been included as being reimbursed to complete that degree. Here at a time when Georgia is being cited as one of the ranking so poorly for our people completing their degree. The Republican leadership is suggesting that you yank the Hope Scholarship from the last part of that degree in these critical programs.
House Bill 299 now awaits action in the House Rules Committee.
Meanwhile, the Georgia Master Teacher and Academic Coach program passed out of the House Education Committee today. The bill recognizes public school teachers for their excellence in the classroom. Lawmakers Angelina Washington joins us live from the Capitol with more on that story. Angelina.
Thanks, Gerald. Senate Bill 34 passed out of the House Education Committee with only one amendment. The amendment affects any teacher applying for the Master Teacher program after July 1st, 2006. Those teachers will have to serve in a needs improvement school in order to receive the 10% increase to their salary.
And what we've done today is anyone who applies for national certification or has applied for national certification in this process right now will still receive their 10% no matter what. All those that have national certification and they currently have it, even when they renew it, they will continue with their 10%. This only applies to those that will begin the process or initially apply for national certification after July 1st, 2006.
Representative Jeanette Jameson questioned how this bill will affect school psychologists, counselors, and social workers. After finding out that they were not included in this piece of legislation, Representative Jameson has decided to draft a bill of her own.
I will now bring a bill that will address these three groups of educational professionals, describe in detail what they go through for their own certification, and include them in the process that will allow for 10% increase in salary if they themselves go to a low-performing school system.
Representative Jameson's bill is set to be introduced to the House tomorrow morning, while Senate Bill 34 heads to House Rules. Reporting live, I'm Angelina Washington for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Angelina. Meanwhile, the state Senate today approved a resolution calling for a constitutional amendment protecting the right to fish and hunt in Georgia. Here's Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson.
Some have asked why we need a constitutional amendment. We do have a law. As you know, there are activist judges and future legislative bodies who could, by simple majority, as we become a more urbanized state, restrict further and further our heritage and our historic rights of hunting and fishing. All of this maintains the ability of the DNR to manage game and us to pass other laws affecting hunting and fishing. There are 400,000 hunters in this state, 1.1 million anglers. They generate $2.2 billion in economic impact in Georgia, 21,000 jobs, $18 million in license fees, and generate over $61 million in tax revenue.
Senate Resolution 67 passed 44-4. It goes to the House. Passage there would mean the measure would be up to voters.
The House today voted to revise the Common Sense Consumption Act to comply with federal law. Representative Bob Smith explained that the bill would continue to guard restaurants and other food companies from lawsuits claiming that they contributed to obesity.
For the most part, it says that the common sense approach that acknowledges personal responsibility for those that become obese. You can't sue restaurants or food and beverage businesses.
And House Bill 196 passed by a vote of 154-8 and moves to the Senate.
In other news, the House Public Safety Committee gave House Bill 242 a do-pass recommendation today. The bill expands accountability of municipalities to report the use of traffic control monitoring devices to more elected officials such as House and Senate leaders. The annual report must include, among other things, a description of the locations where traffic control signal monitoring devices were used, the number of violations recorded at each location, and the amount of civil monetary penalties paid. House Bill 29, the so-called taser bill, did not fare as well. The bill, which prohibited the use of electroshock devices by law enforcement officers, received a do-not-pass recommendation by the House Public Safety Subcommittee and was appointed further study.
The House Judiciary Committee, the non-civil committee, actually spent most of the day debating House Bill 172, the Crime Victims Restitution Act, which would make parents legally responsible for paying damages awarded to the victims of their children's crimes. The exact wording and impact of the bill was debated at length in a subcommittee.
Good families can have bad kids or kids that get in trouble. I'm certainly sensitive to that. I think getting back to the intent of the restitution bill, the intent here is to make victims whole within a reasonable standard. And if we make this the standard for holding parents accountable to any degree so high that restitution can never be made, and in most cases 15-year-olds can't provide significant restitution to victims to make them whole, then we've made that in one of the core purposes of this bill out of reach.
And it is a very high standard, and it's intentionally drafted as a high standard because we don't want parents who are out there doing the right things, trying their best to raise their kids, to have to be paying restitution. I shared with some folks yesterday that I'm a former assistant DA, a former juvenile court solicitor, and I have seen a number of situations where you have good parents who are doing the right thing, who have kids out there doing bad things. And while we want victims made whole, we don't want to make more victims of parents who have really done their job as best as we can expect them to do. And this is a high standard. This is aiming at those parents who are not doing their jobs and who know that they've got a tough job to do it and just aren't doing it.
Despite some opposition and several amendments, House Bill 172 passed the full House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee and heads to House Rules.
Well, the Senate passed a bill creating a Georgia Board of Massage Therapy today. There was some heated debate and opposition, which led to this comment from Senator David Edelman.
Chair recognizes Senator 42nd.
President, would it not be appropriate to table the massage bill because it rubs at least one senator the wrong way?
Clearly one senator has been rubbed the wrong way.
And I should have something clever to say here, but I don't. Senate Bill 110, the massage therapy bill, passed 44-6 and goes to the House.
Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, it's Legislative Day 20, the official halfway mark for the session. We'll have an update on the status of key legislation and all the latest from under the Gold Dome. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. If you missed any part of this broadcast, then tune in when Lawmakers is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. on GPB. And just a reminder for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Lawmakers is, of course, streamed live and then archived on our website every night that we're on the air. Coming up Friday on Lawmakers, we'll talk with Chancellor Thomas Meredith about a new educational partnership called Education Go Get It. The program is designed to increase Georgia's high school graduation rate. That's this Friday on Lawmakers at 7 p.m. Now, stay tuned for Life Laundry. That program is coming up next here on Georgia Public Broadcasting.
And we also wanted to mention that one of our own, Clement McIntosh, Clem as we call him, he is the producer-director for us, has been honored by the State Senate with a resolution for his many contributions to the field of broadcasting. Clem has been with our program, Lawmakers, I think longer than any staff member. We've been around for about 35 years. Clem's been here more than 27 of those times. So congratulations, Clem, and I understand the House is going to honor him as well.
As well they should. He's very, very well deserved.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 19th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. For all of us here at Lawmakers, good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.